Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, making sense of the news.
It is 5:06 on this Friday afternoon. Mike Opelka with you on WMAL. And if you were taking bets today, that when the President of the United States visited the Department of Justice and delivered a very inspiring speech to the members of the DOJ, and I were to tell you, I bet they play YMCA at the end of the speech and he does the dance, you would probably say yes or no. Would you say yes or no? Well, let's go to the videotape and see what happened at the end of President Trump's address to the Department of Justice. Absolutely. Not only did they play YMCA to the standing ovation that the president received, he did the dance. The arms were pumping, the smile was beaming, and the members of the press and the DOJ stood. And there are a lot of cell phones taking videos of this. But they're all holding their cell phones vertically, not horizontally. You need to hold those phones horizontally, people, to get the good video. Just amazing. A year ago, the president was being targeted by the DOJ. Today, with his portrait hanging in the halls of the Department of Justice, he was giving a historic speech. Kind of amazing, isn't it? Kind of amazing. He had some terse words for the mainstream media. Well, some of the mainstream media.
And I believe that CNN and MSDNC, who literally write 97.6% bad about me, are political arms of the Democrat Party. And in my opinion, they're really corrupt and they're illegal. What they do is illegal. It makes no difference how big a victory I had. I can have the biggest victory in history. It makes no difference what kind of a failure the other side has. And I believe
this was some very, very terse language from the president as it relates to the mainstream media, to MSNBC and CNN. Of course, he still calls them MSDNC, which is kind of funny. I admit I laugh every time I hear him say that. The president also waded into some of the conversations about his predecessor, Joe Biden, and talking about the difference between the cases against Donald Trump and the cases against Joe Biden. And this was a fascinating little turn, I thought.
We also terminated the clearances of the Biden crime family and Joe Biden himself. He didn't deserve it. In fact, he was essentially found guilty, but they said he was incompetent, and therefore let's not find him guilty, I guess. Nobody knows what that ruling was, but I didn't want any part of it. I think I would have rather been found guilty than what they found with him.
Now, that's kind of interesting, because if you go back, remember the decision was not to indict Joe Biden because he essentially was a kind old man who really didn't have the memory. Does that excuse you from whatever crimes you may have committed? Donald Trump saying, I'd rather be found guilty than found incompetent. That's kind of what he's saying. I'm paraphrasing the president.
He said he didn't know what the hell he was doing, and therefore he's let him go. I said, I'd rather be convicted, Pam. I think that was not good. I said, please convict me. Don't say that.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting take on that. Would you rather be convicted, or would you rather be non compos mentis? Very interesting. And now it appears that the Democrats are even admitting that they knew. They knew. We now are getting all kinds of verification. Yesterday, Bill de Blasio was on Fox News with Dana Perino talking about what Democrats believed was the condition of the president of the United States, and yet they kind of kept going with it.
Do you think President Biden was up to the job mentally?
I'm going to be confessional here, Dana. I'm like so many other Democrats wanted to believe, and we were wrong, and we should have been more critical.
Do you think you were?
You should have been more critical. You should have been what's known as honest. You should have been honest with people. But no, you did it all because you wanted to hang on to power. And the people sniffed you guys out. You were dishonest brokers. He had more to say.
More critical.
Do you think you were lied to?
I don't think I was lied to. I think it was magical thinking. We wanted to believe what we wanted to believe.
No, you weren't lied to because you all knew. You could all see with your own eyes. We all saw it. How could you not have seen it? Stevie Wonder could see it. Magical thinking.
I think, I'm sure not everyone will agree, I think he did some very good things as president, but it was clear that he was not the same person towards the end of the term.
And yet they were.
I wish Dana Perino or Bill Hammer would have said after de Blasio, after Big Bird says, I think he did some good things as president. Can you name one of them? Can you please name one? No, you can't. Oh, and I wish they would have asked him, honestly.
Asking all of you to campaign for him, to
Yep.
donate money, and that they said he was perfect for the next 4 years. How much did that set the Democratic Party back?
I think it hurt a lot. I think a lot of people have felt betrayed. But I am also saying all of us need to accept some responsibility.
Oh, it is a confessional. It was Confession Thursday at Fox News. How about that? Bill de Blasio admitting that it was magical thinking, meaning they knew. They're all criminals, and it's all for power. I'm just glad it's now coming out now. President Trump, in his little clip there, was talking about the cancellation of the security clearances of the Biden family and of the 51 intelligence officials. And there are people who are saying, how dare he? How dare he do that? Do we remember when CBS News, Norah O'Donnell, interviewed the president and he talked about canceling the briefings for Donald Trump?
Well, let me ask you then something that you do have oversight of as president. Should former President Trump still receive intelligence briefings?
I think not.
Why not?
Because of his erratic behavior.
His erratic behavior? Erratic behavior. I know he meant erratic behavior, but he said erratic behavior. Part of the brain problem there. This was 2021, too. This was early on in the presidency. And he was already slipping. But his erratic behavior. He's got erratic behavior. Anybody? What do we have for erratic behavior?
Unrelated to the insurrection.
I mean, you've called him an existential threat. You've called him dangerous. You've called him reckless.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, you did. And America voted him in.
I believe it.
What's your worst fear if he continues to get these intelligence briefings?
I'd rather not speculate out loud. I just think that there is no need for him to have that intelligence briefing. What value is giving him an intelligence briefing? What impact does he have at all, other than the fact he might slip and say something?
Wait a minute. Joe Biden, and I know he's gone and we shouldn't worry about him, but I think these are all important things to remember. Joe Biden was asked, what's your fear if he gets intelligence briefings? And what did the former president say? Well, he was president at the time. What did he say? I don't want to speculate. And then he speculates.
I'd rather not speculate out loud. I just think that there is no need for him to have that intelligence briefing. What value is giving him an intelligence briefing? What impact does he have at all, other than the fact he might slip and say something?
So you don't want to speculate, but you just speculated. I can't believe the Democrats didn't replace this guy. But you have to wonder why they didn't. Just amazing. CBS News, a conversation with Joe Biden. That was before the Super Bowl. That was in 2021. Just amazing that Biden didn't want Donald Trump to have security briefings. And now Donald Trump has returned the favor, which I think is fantastic. I think that is fair. Oh, boy. The phone lines are always open. Whenever I'm on the radio, I love to hear from you and share your thoughts. 888-630-9625, 888-630-9625. Phil is in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Phil, welcome to WMAL.
Michael, I just wanted to thank you for the way you characterized President Trump's victory at the DOJ today, because I'm going to hold that in my heart all weekend. That made my weekend because Donald Trump's been through hell. It was a dark time for a lot of years, and he finally made it through, and we've got our man, and we've got America on the mend, and I just want to thank you for bringing that to me.
Well, you know, you're welcome. It's one of those things that stood out, Phil, when you think about it. When you go back a year ago, and he was taking incoming from all sides of the DOJ and in New York as well, and then at the same time trying to run a campaign. And I don't know if I would have had the intestinal fortitude to stand up and not rip every day. Now, he was under a gag order, but it would have been really hard to stick to that gag order. So I noticed how far we've come since, and I will tell you, honestly, Phil, I do think July 13th, last summer, the first attempt on the president's life that we know about, because I think there probably were other failed attempts, I think that changed him greatly and also helped make him the man he is today and steeled his spine and his resolve. So I think this was a very important speech today. And I know there was a lot of teleprompter reading, but it was also a speech that the president interpreted as well. So it was a very big deal. Thank you for recognizing that. What I saw, too, I thought you never know when you say something if people are on the same page as you. But I thought that's good. Very good. I appreciate you being there. The press secretary, before all this happened, came out and talked to the press briefly, Caroline Leavitt, talking about some of the things that we talked about with Joe DeGeneva just about a half an hour ago about the trials and tribulations that are being foisted upon the administration as they try and accomplish things, and they have federal and district court judges stopping the executive branch, overreaching, as it were. Here's a little bit of her statements to the media.
District court rulings about all the fired probationary workers use the same language here just now that was in the statement about fighting back against that ruling. Do you mean appealing or something else? And does the administration plan to comply with those orders in the meantime?
Fighting back by appealing, fighting back by using the full weight of the White House counsel's office and our lawyers at the federal government who believe that this injunction is entirely unconstitutional. And it is, for anybody who has a basic understanding of the law. You cannot have a low-level district court judge filing an injunction to usurp the executive authority of the President of the United States. That is completely absurd. And as the executive of the executive branch, the President has the ability to fire or hire. And you have these lower-level judges who are trying to block this President's agenda. It's very clear. And as I just cited, I was appalled by the statistic when I saw it this morning. In 1 month, in February, there have been 15 injunctions of this administration in our agenda. In 3 years under the Biden administration, there were 14 injunctions.
So 1 month, the month of February, there were 15 injunctions against the Trump presidency. In 3 years of the Biden presidency, there were 14. That speaks volumes right there. That tells you everything you need to know. That it is those district courts that are they're judge shopping every time the Democrats file a lawsuit to try and stop. And these little brush fires, as we talked about, are meant to stop the president from being the president. It's lawfare once again. All right, it's 20 minutes after 5.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
Well, we're trying real hard to make sense of the news. Mike Opelka with you on WMAL. And just around the corner, you're going to meet a new friend, Mike McCormick, a guy I met at CPAC, an author with a fascinating history in this town, in the district. We'll talk about his book and some of the things he's experienced and wants to share with us. That's in about 10 minutes. I do want to tell you, be careful with things you see on the internet. AI is getting really good. I just saw a picture of Elizabeth Warren running from FBI agents, and she was being chased, and she was carrying a giant wicker basket full of money. And I'm thinking it's probably fake. I'm just thinking. Just thinking, because, Democrats don't carry cash. They carry gold bars. So we learned that from Gold Bar Bob, who's probably not happy these days. Looking at the markets today, the peace dividend, I keep talking about it, the reported agreement from Russia to consider a 30-day ceasefire against Ukraine in their war against Ukraine, and I think some of the tariff news, the markets all went up today. The Dow was up, the S&P 500 was up, the NASDAQ was up. Now, it's still a down week, but, trends can be spotted. So let's try and be positive about that. We will monitor everything. Do I have time to get one more in here? Let's talk to John near Germantown. John, I don't have much time, but you had something to say about Trump and Biden?
Yeah. And thanks for having me. So I just thought when that woman followed up with Joe Biden and said, and he said, well, I don't want to speculate. To me, he doesn't know, right? He actually doesn't know. He's not speculating. He got misty and he got ambiguous, and he's like, and so I was like, he doesn't know how to answer this question because he's kind of just throwing it out there. And so I just thought he didn't really know how to answer it because he didn't really have a good excuse.
And that was 3 years before we all knew that the brain was totally fried. 3 years. I think we dodged a lot of bullets in that time. All right, I'm stepping aside, taking a break. Meet Mike McCormick, a very interesting cat, next on WMAL.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
It is 5:35 on this Friday afternoon. Mike Opelka with you. I want to share some time with you with a guy that I met briefly at CPAC, but this audience knows Mike McCormick. This audience knows who Mike McCormick is. He's been on with Vince in the past. So I'm happy that he's been here before, and I'm excited to talk about several things with Mike McCormick. I was introduced to Mike by a guy I respect greatly, James Rosen of Newsmax, and we talked briefly and then exchanged messages saying, hey, we got to talk. And then today turned out to be the perfect opportunity. Mike was a stenographer in the White House, not just for Joe Biden, but for many years, and has flown on Air Force One and Air Force Two into combat zones, and has worked so late at the White House that he says he was there late enough for the ghost to come out. And I really want to know about that. Mike McCormick, you have written many great books, but is there one coming about the White House ghost that we can expect?
There is a book that I wrote when I first started self-publishing called 15 Years Deplorable, a White House Memoir, and I think I have some things in there about that.
Because that whole ghost area is very popular on some of those niche television channels. I think White House Ghost could be a big smasheroonie.
I mean, the thing was, we had our office in the stenographer's office in the Eisenhower building on the very top floor in this little sort of alcove. It's an old building. And when in the middle of the night, when you're walking around, the only person up there, because I did that a lot for late night events, like if they were overseas and I was doing something, listening to the recording and getting the transcript done, it just got kind of eerie. It's an eerie feeling up there on the 5th floor of the Eisenhower building.
Well, I was there the day before CPAC. A bunch of us were there doing interviews with some of the cabinet members. And when you walking down the halls in broad daylight, you hear your heels on the marble and the sound is bouncing off the walls. And I can only imagine in the dark of night, in the wee hours of the morning, it would take on a spooky tone.
Oh, yeah. But, here's the thing about working at the White House. Whenever you're there, no matter what time of night, the flag above the White House is always lit. It's spot lit, and it's beautiful. So there's always that reassurance. You may feel a little eerie, but you just look out the window and look at the flag, and you're A-OK. And it's a great place to work because of that.
Well, I love that image. And, yes, the flag code mandates that if you're flying a flag at night, it has to have a spotlight on it. I hope everyone is a devotee of the flag code and flies the flag properly. Now, your latest book, it's An Almost Insurmountable Evil, How Obama's Deep State Defiled the Catholic Church and Executed the Wuhan Plandemic. I'm very nervous. We're here on the 5th anniversary. It was last week, the 5th anniversary of Wuhan. And I think we're just starting to scratch the surface on knowing everything we can know about this. Are you feeling the same, or do you think we've got everything now?
Oh, no, we don't have everything. There's a lot to come. So what I did in my book about the Wuhan pandemic was I looked at what Joe Biden did. And basically, I started back in 2011. So the book, to me, what had started in 2011 with a speech Joe Biden gave in Sichuan University in Chengdu, China, and he told the Chinese, "You have too many old people." And if you look at what happened with the Wuhan pandemic, that's who got killed. It wasn't kids; it was old people. And so it was 9 years. It took them 9 years of looking at how to devise a specific virus. And I've asked virologists, is it possible to set up a virus that affects only old people? And they didn't really know. But they were working on it. They were working on it in Wuhan, and Joe Biden knew about it all along. He had investment. He and his son had an investment in a company called Metabiota that was working with EcoHealth Alliance and working with Xi Jinping, the Wuhan bat lady. In 2013, they were doing that. And that's when Hunter and Joe went over there in December of 2013 and set up this investment in this company, Metabiota. Metabiota goes through the process to 2020. They were there on the front lines of the Ebola outbreak. They were there in Africa. They were looking for Ebola samples. Metabiota becomes an investment by the CIA in 2017 when they're starting to set up the Wuhan pandemic. And then Metabiota, what happened was in 2014, after the Ebola outbreak hit, Ron Klain, one of Biden's top operatives, gets named the Ebola czar. Well, in that fall, they set up a huge, something called Predict 2, was funded by $200 million through USAID. And that's where Fauci got the money to pay for all this research in the Wuhan that did this gain of function research. So that all came to a head in 2014. It was a 5-year funding cycle. That funding cycle ended in September of 2019.
Wow.
And Trump came in and he said, I'm not going to refund. I'm not going to fund any of this surveillance stuff. It's too much money. We're wasting it. That's why they started the pandemic. He stops the funding. The funding stops in 2019, and the Wuhan pandemic hits. That's what they rolled out.
It's almost simultaneous. If you go back and you look at the clock, if that is the August and September, and the end of the funding happens, and then we had those World Games in Wuhan, where all those military troops attended the same event, and then we started seeing the outbreak in the senior home out in Washington, which was very near the base. So, yeah, that all tracks correctly.
And at this time, Joe Biden is the worst campaigner in the Democratic Party. He's got the lead, and he starts losing every single primary there is. He loses in Iowa. He loses in Nevada. And it wasn't until March, when they shut everything down, that he started turning it around. But then he campaigned from his basement, and he got to hide himself away. And people didn't get a good look at how degenerated he was.
Yeah, this is true. And boy, this all syncs up very nicely. We're talking with author Mike McCormick, a guy who had great experience inside the White House. I said the White House press office from 2002 to 2018. Now, today the president spoke at the Department of Justice. The first time in 10 years the president has spoken. You watched it, I'm guessing, and any thoughts? Anything you noticed about that speech?
Yeah, he had to address the country from the Department of Justice and basically give the first responders, the legal, the law officers, law enforcement officers, the Department of Justice, rank and file people that are still there, just give them a boost of confidence and, encouragement. I mean, that's what it was. We got to restore faith in our justice system, which is true. He's been through a lot. He talked about Rudy Giuliani being through a lot, General Flynn being through a lot. People have been through a lot for the last 4 years. America's been through a lot. The southern border was a mess. And so he got there and he got that message across. I mean, today I emailed the U.S. Attorney in D.C. to tell them about something that I've talked with Vince in the past about. I was a witness to a crime that Joe Biden and Jake Sullivan committed in Air Force Two in 2014, and the FBI didn't look into it. And the special counsel, David Weiss, I tried to get in front of his investigation. He didn't look into it. So I've emailed U.S. Attorney for D.C., Ed Martin, and said, I emailed his email, webmaster at USA DC, that's U.S. Attorney DC. Hey, look, you guys got to have me in and talk to me about this because this was a crime that happened and it hasn't been looked into, and it's serious. This is what led to the terrible outcome in the Ukraine war. So yeah, we've got to get back to a legal system that we can trust.
Now, you just did that email to the U.S. Attorney. How long will you wait? Do you have to go a certain time before you maybe go more public with this? Is there another venue? Is there a congressional committee you can ask to hear you out?
Well, I sent an email to that same address three weeks ago and haven't heard back. So this email was, hey, look, I sent an email to you guys and I haven't heard back. And then you got in touch with me and said, hey, do you want to be on the radio? I said, you know what? I do have something to tell you guys on the radio. And this is what it is. The U.S. Attorney in D.C., they better look into what I can tell them about and put me in front of a grand jury. I can testify. Joe Biden committed a crime in Air Force Two. Jake Sullivan committed a crime in Air Force Two. And once I testify to that in front of a grand jury, it becomes evidence. And that's exactly what President Trump was talking about in his speech. There's been a degeneration of what the Democrats did to our legal system, and a lot of it has to do with how they distort what evidence is. Well, this is an eyewitness. This is a person who can be an eyewitness and say, there's evidence. Our ex-president is a criminal, and his national security advisor is a criminal. They were involved in a conspiracy to cover up the crimes they committed in Ukraine. And there's a lot more people in that conspiracy that I would talk about.
I have to admit ignorance. I don't have the complete list of pardons that Biden auto-penned. Was Jake Sullivan on that list? Do you know? Is he one of the people that got a preemptive pardon?
No, he wasn't on that list, and neither were the Vindmans. And the Vindmans are in my book as being somebody to be investigated too.
Well, this is great stuff, Mike McCormick. I know you've been here before. First time you and I have talked outside of our 2 or 3 minutes in the halls at CPAC, and I hope that you will always be a friend of WMAL, and you'll come back, especially after you get a phone call from the D.C. Attorney's Office and inviting you in. But I have to ask you one other thing. I have to ask you about something that's totally divorced from politics, and it's something you did when you co-founded the Team River Runner, the kayak therapy program for wounded service members of Walter Reed. Is that still going on?
Yeah, Team River Runner is still going on. They've got chapters in states all around the country, and it's warming up, so they got people outside. I haven't been active with them for a long time, about 20 years. We started 20 years ago, 2024. And I got married and got busy with family. But Joe Mornini is the executive director of Team River Runner. He's done a fantastic job. And what they do is they take wounded lower limb amputees and people who've been wounded. They take blind people who've been combat blinded, and they take them out kayaking as, sort of like a support program. And it helps people in the community connect with, our warriors, our war fighters who have come back and need some extra support. It's a really good program where the community and the warriors can sort of meet together and just go for a kayak paddle and have some social activity together.
It's a wonderful thing, and I encourage people, if you're so inclined, these are the kinds of programs you need to support. Team River Runner, a kayak therapy program for wounded vets, wounded service members. Really great stuff. Mike, again, thank you for squeezing us in today and making time. If you want to know more about Mike and his books, if you go to Amazon, just put in Mike McCormick. You get the whole story. You get the whole list of books you can get, including the one he self-published years ago. And then you can learn about some of the ghosts running around the Eisenhower building. And, Mike, when you get into the ghost stories, I want you to come back again as well.
All right, I will, Mike.
Thank you, brother. Have a great weekend. God bless.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye.
There he goes. Wow, interesting. So I would love to hear the ghost stories. I know the story about Biden and Sullivan is one that we want to get to the bottom of, but I think it's better that it gets to an official testimony situation first. And then we'll also have inside track on it. It is 5:49.
WMAL, making sense of education, because what's happening in your kid's school matters. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
We are trying to make sense of education. It's Mike Opelka on WMAL, and I did post that statement by that teacher in the DMV, and she really went after a student who was wearing a Make America Great Again hat. It's hard to make sense of that. A couple more items before we wrap up, and the great one, Mark Levin, gets in here, and you can kick off your weekend with Levin. I want to note something that just kind of crossed. Late today, Senator Grassley released records showing the FBI, prior to today, obviously, obtained Donald Trump, Mike Pence's cell phones and conducted sweeping interviews to advance the anti-Trump Arctic frost investigation. What can be done? Well, President Trump tried to instill confidence into the FBI again by that visit. He was rallying the troops, if you will, and I think today was step one. Let's see what happens over the weekend, and then we'll get together again on Monday. God willing, I'll be here again. Thank you, all of you who joined us. We'll be back again. As I said, Mark Levin is waiting in the wings. And until next time, it's Mike Opelka reminding you, testudo, my friends, testudo.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.